You are listening to audio from the Decidedly podcast. For more information, find us on Instagram at Decidedly Podcast.
What movies are you watching right now? What's the last movie you watched?
Geez. I saw the Sound of Freedom in theaters.
Oh, did you like it?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
You know, it's not maybe a movie that's going to make my top 10 all-time list, but it was worth going to.
I'm not usually a fan of message movies, but I didn't feel like it was a message movie. I'd heard that it was, so I kind of went in with it.
It was, I was a little skeptical. It wasn't, it was no Veggie Tales.
What do you mean by that?
There's no, you never saw Veggie Tales?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it was no Bible Man.
Okay, all right.
You never saw Bible Man?
I didn't watch Bible Man either.
Well,
those were before my time.
Okay, well, I loved God as a child. I don't know about you, so I watched Veggie Tales. Veggie Tales is a Christian cartoon movie series. How do you not?
I watched Davy and Goliath when I was, growing up. That was Sunday morning TV.
Okay,
but I went in with an attitude. I had also heard negative things about it. Actually, I'd heard that people were saying negative things about it, which after watching the movie, I think was publicity stunt.
I think that they are the ones that were saying the negative things.
Yes.
So that people would say, people are talking bad about this movie.
Right. I think
you should go see it as a protest to the liberal elite.
Right. The producers put out bad press about the movie on purpose.
I think you're smart. It was like a Ashley Madison move or whatever.
Yeah.
Ashley Madison. They ran that divorce. Oh, this is ruining marriages and it's blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Christian wives against Ashley Madison.
Right. They were trying to shut it down.
Yeah, it was Ashley Madison.
Yes.
Yeah. You might be right about that.
I think I do.
That makes total sense. Well, speaking of movies, our guest today actually starred in one. I think maybe our only guest to actually be a real actor in a real movie.
Right.
Whitney Uland. She is a multifaceted entrepreneur, filmmaker, actor, and expert in intentional living. With her perspective on harnessing celebrity energy, Whitney empowers entrepreneurs to leverage their personal brand and authenticity to build thriving businesses. As the owner of Abundant Artist Coaching and Outer Darkness Films, she combines her expertise in intentional living, brain optimization, and mindset practices to guide entrepreneurs toward unlocking their full potential. From her acclaimed debut feature film, The Cosmos Sisters, to her dedication in helping entrepreneurs tap into their inner celebrity energy, Whitney is committed to cultivating unique personal brands. We talked about how to unlock your mind, hack your nervous system so that you can seek out and achieve the big visions that you have for your life and your business. Whitney has, a incredibly unique perspective, a unique outlook on life. And despite our different worlds, we agreed on so many things and shared a lot of similar views. It was really impressive to talk to Whitney and hear how she thinks. So stick around, you'll learn something, and you'll be one step closer to realizing that clear vision that you have. I'm Sanger Smith. As always, I'm with my dad, Sean Smith, and this is Decidedly. You say you help people become famous.
I do.
And I could come up with a lot of ideas, but they're all illegal.
Okay, sure.
So
that's called infamous.
Yeah, I think I misunderstood.
Yeah.
So I was hoping you could get me on a more straight and narrow path.
Oh, I don't know if it'll be straight and narrow, but happy to clear the air in terms of how I help people become famous. So I am a life coach for artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, and influencers, people who have big, important missions and want those missions to be out in the world. I'm truly a believer that some of the best people in the world are the people who are the most afraid of being famous, especially, a lot of people who grew up with religious upbringings or whatever and just have been taught that, the industry, like people are greedy or they're self-involved if they want to be famous, or that there's something wrong with them, when really what I see in the work that I do with clients, I've been doing this for several years now, is people that have big missions and just know in their soul that they're meant to make a big impact in the world. And so the work that I do is teaching people how to develop, it's kind of like the it factor, but it's what I call celebrity energy. So this is the energy that makes you magnetic to people and gives you ultimately the confidence to, whether it is build an online platform or walk into a room and pitch yourself, or to, create a large platform for a client base, things like that. Ask for a big raise, right? That it factor, that thing that makes you, that turns heads. I'm sure y'all have experienced this. I live in Los Angeles. So for me, this work kind of started when I was, walking around, and all of a sudden you just kind of can feel when there is a celebrity in the room. Like, even if it's, and sometimes I'll see people and I don't even know who they are, but I can tell that they're somebody, right? And so they have that it factor, and it is ultimately it's confidence, but it's also it's the ability to feel safe in front of large groups of people. If you think about, like, as humans, we've evolved from cavemen, cavewomen, right? And we have this primal instinct to just play it safe, to not upset anyone, to not go out of the way, or not to upset anyone in our tribe, right? And those primal instincts keep us playing small a lot of the time. And so the work I do is helping people rewrite those narratives at the subconscious level so that they can feel safe turning heads and making a big impact.
I want to go back to how you got into that work. So you started in acting and directing and writing, and take me through that journey on how you developed there.
Yeah, exactly. So I since I was a little kid, I just kind of always knew that I was meant to be famous, be somebody, whatever you want to call it. And so for me, that looked like, I guess I'll be an actor. So yeah, I have a BFA in musical theater, studied musical theater in college, and then went to New York. And, I had over 150 auditions under my belt, and I kept getting callbacks, and I kept getting, people would say, "You're great. We're just not really sure what to do with you. We're not really sure where to put you." And I just was getting really discouraged. And ultimately, that timing coincided with my dad passing away. My dad was always, my biggest cheerleader, my biggest advocate. He was also an entrepreneur and just really had that kind of like maverick heart, that Mustang heart, right, of the being wild and free. And he had always just really supported me. And when I lost him, I realized that most of my confidence actually was not my own. It was confidence that I had relied on of him having that confidence in me. And so I really did have this rock bottom moment of just looking around and saying, there's this part of me and my soul that knows that I'm meant to do something, and yet that is not the reality of what is shaping up here. And so it really did take me on this pretty deep dive, journey through grieving and identity and learning who I am and standing on my own feet. This was in my early 20s, and figuring that out. And I ended up hiring a life coach, and the life coach, her name is Brooke Castillo. She's incredible. She's very famous in the coaching industry, and worked with her for several years, and eventually was like, I think I love this actually. And just the ability that I have to help people into, whether that is now, when I'm working with clients one-on-one, or in my group, or even through my podcast, or, content, or things like that, but just having these important conversations and helping people to help out. It feels like the good fight, right? Like helping out the people that have, the same as me. And so yeah, I think just kind of growing up, I do have that background in, not only the entertainment industry, and so I'm also a writer, director, and have worked with a lot of, and producer. I've worked with a lot of publicists. I've worked with a lot of agents. I've worked with a lot of, the people who traditionally help people become quote unquote famous, right? And that mixed with then the mindset and the certification that I have, and, all of the years of trial and error in my own life, are ultimately, I guess, kind of what got me to where I am now.
So it must have been fairly discouraging that you're going through, you said 150 interviews. What's going through your head when you're getting that kind of result or that kind of rejection? I mean, I started my career and we were in sales and singers, been in this situation before where you're approaching people and trying to persuade them of something, and it just doesn't land, right? And there's always that feeling of rejection, but I didn't have to go through 150 of it.
Yeah, I've been rejected a lot, and I will say it is a muscle for sure. But yeah, I mean, you start to wonder, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe there's something else I should do. I think something that's really hard about acting, and I'm sure, and as an entrepreneur as well, I do feel like I cut my rejection teeth as an actor, whereas now as an entrepreneur, I think I can put myself out there pretty hard, because I'm like, I've failed so many times. Now, right? Yeah, exactly. But especially as an actor, when it's, if you love, like, I'm trying to think, like, my favorite cup of coffee, I'll tell everyone about that, right? Like, I'll shout it from the rooftops. When you really believe in something, it's easy to sell. It's, why, if you had the cure for cancer, you're going to shout it from the rooftops, right? But when it's you're selling your business, when you're selling your product, when you're selling your face, we all have worthiness issues, right? We have this, who am I to do this? And even if that's not, the thought that's running through your head, we have this primal instinct that's saying, don't go out of the cave, don't ruffle any feathers. And if you want to be a thought leader in the industry, you're going to have to ruffle feathers. You're going to have to say things that are new, that are revolutionary, that people aren't necessarily going to agree with or understand. And so, it really is about creating that safety within yourself and creating that. Confidence is oversimplifying what it really is, but it's the same of, like, getting to the place that you believe that what you offer and the way that you're showing up in the world changes the world just as much as the cure for cancer does, right? So that then you get rejected, and, like, that's like, if I said I have the cure for cancer and someone's like, well, I don't want it, I'd be like, okay, so you're dumb, right? Like, and obviously it's not like you want to think that the people that are saying no to you are dumb, but
you wouldn't question whether or not the cure was actually good.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you stop, so that really is what this celebrity energy is when you get to the place that you do become bulletproof to rejection. And it doesn't hurt so bad. It doesn't faze you. You just keep going with it.
Well, I think it's so cool that you're still, at the same time that you are coaching clients on this mindset, you're still an artist yourself.
Yeah.
And that seems like almost a required component of what you're doing. Right? Because if you said, you know what, I gave it all up so I could help you, it doesn't work. You're going out there and practicing that muscle and showing people at the same time how to work out on their own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will say it's exhausting. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it did. I mean, I've worked with people that, like, you've seen on red carpets, right? And yet no one wants to admit that they hired someone to teach them how to be famous. So a lot of the work I do, it's not like I can blast my clients on a billboard, right? So I really did have this moment where I just was like, okay, I guess I got to be the example of this. And so I've got to have something that I can always point to, like my own life as a testimonial, right? And so for me, that's been, the easiest way for me to do that, to show that, to have like a little proof of concept, if you will, is, with followers online, because there's a metric for it, and people love metrics. People love to see a number. They love to see a recurring, or they love to see the revenue, all of those things. And so obviously I do have those numbers to back it up, but yeah, I continue to write, direct, to act, and produce as well. I have
Cosmo
marina.
Sisters on my watch list for tonight. That's what I'm doing.
Oh, heck yeah. I love that. I hope you enjoy. It's a great time.
Well,
I'm not gonna lie.
Looking forward to it. How did you start that? I guess if you're going through as an actor in the way the industry is set up right now, you've really got to be able to produce your own content, I would think. It is, be a writer.
There's never been a better time to be independent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what, resonates with my life and work with, my clients, especially the entrepreneurs, is I think that the people that get to the point that they're like, I want to be a thought leader, I want to be doing things my own way, it's when the system has failed you, right? When you're like, oh, I'm tired of having a boss. I'm tired of having, X, Y, and Z or whatever. And I think the same thing for me, right? Like I was auditioning and ultimately was tired of playing like the guy's girlfriend or the stripper or whatever it was. Like the roles were just so uninteresting to me, and also you need a big break to get into the industry. And so for me, I decided, well, I'll just make my own big break and just start writing as well. And I think that really did lead me to stepping into, instead of just an actor, but coming up as like a leader in the industry. And now I'm in the position, during, this is one of my favorite things is about what I do, is during the pandemic when no artist was getting work, right? Everyone is at home. I was able to employ 24 artists, which just as an independent creator, that was a big thing for me, right? And
that's
to be
huge.
able to step into that. And I think that that's what my mission is all about, is because I do believe that when we have good-hearted people in positions of power, and that power comes, I believe that fame is an asset, right? When you have same as like an email list is an asset, having a TikTok following is an asset. It's people that get behind you and get behind your ideas. And when you have that, you can leverage that and turn it into other things. You can turn it into a brand deal, a book deal, Good Morning America interview, right? Whatever it is that you want to exchange that resource for. And it is ultimately power. And so again, all this just comes back to helping people that have maybe been failed by the systems or maybe just want something more for it and giving the power back to those people.
As we record this, we've got an actors and writer strike going on. Is that impacting the coaching work you're doing? Obviously, it's impacting the acting work, but is it impacting the coaching work?
It's interesting because similarly to the pandemic, I think it gave people a chance to reflect, right? And to look inward and say like, oh, maybe I should reroute, maybe I should try something new. And so, I do still have a good amount of, I think that a lot of actors were like, I'm going to dip out of acting class for a minute or whatever, but they're realizing like, okay, now I can use this time and really build that foundation for myself as an artist or creator. But I also, like, one of my favorite flexes is that my clients are still working. So there is a strike, right? But they are like, especially, and I'm not, I'd have to double check because I do know that some of the contracts with SAG are still doable because I do have clients who are in the unions who are on sets right now. And I have had, or there were different things with like the Writers Guild with the way that things were shooting. It could not, anything that had already previously been written could still be shot. And so like I had actors, I had writers on sets, things like that. And that really is, again, when you have this asset of fame, when you know how to tap into the celebrity energy, you become the person that gets to be not above the rules. I think that sounds a little bit bad, but you become bulletproof to an industry, right? And so you can be the person where if there's an economic downturn, if there's a strike, if there's a, whatever, you get to still have not everyone is suffering from every single like global catastrophe, right? And there are people that get to like rise above that and to sift through it. And I think that when you step into this thought leader level, or what I call, the entrepreneurs that I work with, I have a program called Entrepreneur to Empire, right? When they're stepping into this, having like a major like mogul level, like multiple brands, multiple companies, things like that. And now they want to be known not just for their brands, but for themselves so that they can leverage that into a book or, a tour or whatever that is. That's really what makes you impenetrable to downturns, things like that, is when people care about you, not just the products that you've created.
And confidence is a key skill for adaptability, right? If you're going to have to upend your work because of pandemic or a strike or otherwise industry change, being confident in your ability in the last skill, hey, that's going to translate to confidence in this new skill that maybe I'm only learning.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you know what? Because totally, it builds resilience, right? It's like once you have that self-concept that I am confident, I figure things out, then it doesn't matter if you're bad at something at first, you can keep trying. But, it is interesting. The work that I do, we're really changing your identity, right? We're changing who you are in the world. We're changing the way that you are seeing yourself, and that changes the way that people see you. I like to think of opportunities like a bus. So if you miss one, there's always another one that you can catch, and there's always another one coming. And so once you change your identity and you become that magnet, you're going to start catching those opportunities quicker and quicker. One of my favorite stories is I had an actor who came to me, and when I work with clients, it's for 6 months, and we always pick a goal together. And part of my offer is that I guarantee that they'll hit that goal. And if they don't, I'll continue working with them until they do. Haven't had anyone not hit the goal yet, which is something that I'm very proud of. But
what types of goals do they put out there?
It depends. That is something that I do work with. It is very unique. So I have clients go through some modules and self-diagnose kind of which traps they normally fall into and make sure that it is the right goal for their success. Because a lot of the time we actually, as a sneaky form of self-sabotage, we pick the wrong goal, right? Especially these people who are thought leaders, who are, have multi-passions. We get like shiny object syndrome and we're like, I'm going to do all the things at once or whatever, right? So I do like the foundation of my work is teaching people how to pick that next step and go in that direction. But it can be anywhere from, a certain number of monthly recurring revenue. It could be a certain follower count. It could be a certain like finishing their book. It could be, whatever it is definitely tailored to the client, to their specific needs, their goals, and also their sensibilities and where their own blind spots are. But I had this one.
So these aren't big, just, aspirational, like I want to have a late night talk show, or I want to be, I want to star in the next Mission Impossible or something. It is a numeric goal that you're, ascertaining that is achievable within the next quarter or 6 months or
Yeah, exactly.
She's not a wizard.
She's not. Well, she could charge a lot more if she were.
I know. Maybe I should.
Anything you want, one wish. Jeannie
get
Whitney
one
will
wish.
make it happen.
No, I mean, well, and that's the thing is that, like, I mean, I know you're joking about that, but we're dreamers, right? Entrepreneurs and artists, we're dreamers. We see the moon. That's why we're doing what we're doing, right? And so sometimes we do that, right? Like, I'll have a client who's like, I want to be at the Tonys this year. And I'm like, whoa, we got to back up to get to what the actual next goal is. What is the goal that will move you to the Tonys?
Before you get to the Tonys?
Exactly.
Sometimes there's an intermediary goal there.
Got to get a job on Broadway first.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, though, that people may set the wrong goal, because as wealth advisors, when I came into this industry, I was told what you do is you help people meet their financial goals. And I found out really quickly that nobody has any. And if they do, they actually aren't really that important to them. They're bad. Maybe they're unachievable. Maybe it's something that they said because they thought that I wanted them to say that.
Interesting.
All types of different things. So what I did with my clients is I went through, I wanted to have a reset with everybody on these goals. And so I had this like portal that they could log in and see their progress to their goals. I deleted everybody's goals. I wrote them down, so I knew what they were. You could see them. Mm-hmm. But I said, I want you to go back and set your goals again. And almost nobody set the exact same goals.
Wow.
And these are things that we were talking about at least quarterly together. I mean, we were making big financial decisions based on what you said was important. And then I said, go write them down again. They couldn't even remember what they were. Or they would add goals that we had never talked about. Oh my gosh, I've been completely wasting our time.
You never told me you wanted a boat.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that. I thought we've been saving money for this house. You didn't even remember where that was going to be. Yeah, all sorts of weird things happen with goal setting.
Well, totally. And it makes sense, right? Like, our brains are wired, again, for survival. They're not wired for growth. And so if we do want to grow, we have to outsmart our brains, right? Like, the two skills that ultimately, if I was gonna narrow it down to what I do, is I help clients rewire their brains and hack their nervous system. So meaning, like, our brains, again, we're wired for survival. You might think I don't know, maybe $1 million is the like, or I don't know, what is it that's like the $10 million is the like freedom number where you can always just live off of the interest, right? So let's say like that's someone's goal. That if you're used to making $100,000 a year, that's change. And your brain sees any change, even if it's in a positive direction, as a threat, because it's a threat to your identity. It's a threat to the way that you're showing up in the world. And right now you are safe. So you might not want to be only making $100,000 a year, but your brain thinks that it's safe. And so your brain's going to find...
But you're not dead, though. Yeah.
You're not dead, exactly. And your family hasn't abandoned you, hopefully, right? And that's really what our subconscious brain is always just looking for. And so our brains find these really sneaky ways of sabotaging us. One of them that you just mentioned, and this is, the work that I do with clients, is going through and seeing what is your pattern. A lot of people, it's to change their goal, right? It's to get confused about what it is, to forget about it, to have distractions. We also will find these really sneaky, like messed up ways of sabotaging, like things will start going really well in one direction, and then you'll just start picking a fight with your spouse for literally no reason other than just that, like, it's your brain's way of distracting you from going towards this goal that would lead to change. So yeah, that makes so much sense that's what you see with wealth as well.
What are some practical things that people can do to overcome that? Because as you're explaining it, I was thinking of 100 different ways that I've done the same thing. I mean, I'll have a business.
Change your goals?
No. Well, more resist change more broadly.
Change. Okay.
I had a business coach who I hired to help me set the vision for my company, and one of those things was revenue. And he suggested a number that made me want to vomit. I was like, I don't even want to do that, man. It's just like that's too much. And I didn't really realize why I was resistant to that, because I could remove myself from the situation in the moment and say, there's no real reason why doubling my business or whatever it was should be off-putting. That should be good. I should be happy about that. I should be excited about that. Why was my initial instinct to not do it? And that makes all the sense in the world to me, is that it's a threat to the status quo. The status quo, which is at least not death and destruction right now.
Exactly. Well, and it's that same thing, right? I'm sure your clients and the listeners can relate to this. Of that old adage of like more money, more problems, right? Or that's like the big one it's become part of the zeitgeist, right? So I would say, like, in terms of like practical things, we got to look at 3 things that are keeping you in that mindset, or keeping you playing safe, or keeping you from making change. And also, I just want to say, like, this, it's the same thing with wealth, or the same thing with money is the same thing with fame. People think, oh, famous people are self-centered. Famous people, and people say wealthy people are greedy, right? That's not true. It's money and fame are just a resource. They're just going to be used based on the person who's using them. The same as you could use a kitchen knife to slice an onion, you could also use that same kitchen knife to murder someone, right? Like, and so it really is just based on who has the resource and what they're using it for. But the first thing that we have to do is just identify what these stories are and what they're doing, right? That is that part where I'm saying we have to hack your brain. And overarchingly, there's 3 main components. So the first one is going to be this primal instinct that's just like, don't change anything, right? It's safe right here. The second thing we have is societal norms. So this could look like, if you grew up in a town where everyone, I'm just using 100K for whatever, but where everyone made 100K, then to make 200K, that's going to seem like a threat to the tribe, right? It's the same thing with, like, a lot of the people that I work with are women, people of color, things like that. And so they don't necessarily have a lot of role models or a lot of people that they can look to and say, like, this is safe for me to go and live in this big, expansive way. And then the third thing is, trauma, negative past experiences. So, we always, like, oftentimes uncover these times where, maybe you did try putting yourself online and you got attacked by a bunch of, like, trolls or something like that. Or maybe you did make more money and then you lost it all. You made a bad investment, right? You made that, like, risky choice and it didn't pay off. Those things are going to teach you to just keep going back. Just don't change anything. Keep things exactly where they're at. And so really, unless I like to think about the mindset, kind of all of this it's the roots, it's the subconscious things, it's what's below the surface. And a lot of the times, I'm sure you've seen with creating wealth, it's so much more than just put money in this place and do this. You have to have the mentality to sustain that. Otherwise, it's like when someone wins the lottery, they lose the money within a year or whatever that statistic is. It's the same thing with creating fame. If you don't have that foundation there, then you're going to self-sabotage. And that's why we end up seeing so many people turn to alcoholism or drugs or addictions, different things like that, because ultimately they don't have the foundation to sustain the power that is.
Sean and I kind of see a different version of, I think, the same psychological phenomenon in our world. When we will work with people who have money, but are resistant to using that to better their own life or create meaningful impact in the world. And so I'm sure you see that as well. It's like you have clients that either already maybe have the fame or they at least have the opportunity to get the fame, but there's something within these people that have the fame or have the money that aren't willing to use it, that there's this feeling of unworthiness or there's a delusion of, I don't really have the money.
Yes.
I don't have money like that. Or
I don't deserve the results of what would happen if I spent it.
I don't deserve
the
that.
new car, the vacation, or whatever.
Yeah, I remember I had a client. She's a single woman who she's never been married. She's got enough money to light half of it on fire, and she's still never going to worry about running out of money. Like, she's done great for herself financially. And I said, what's the biggest issue that you're facing in life right now? And you know what she said to me? Adulting. She was like, I don't like scheduling my doctor's appointments. I don't like making sure that I'm there when the AC repairman needs to come fix something. It was all the chores. And I said, oh, well, you could hire someone to do all that.
Yeah.
Like, that's so easy. You could just hire someone. And she goes, oh, come on, that's for rich people. I said, you're rich.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on that with her, by the way. We have not yet hired an assistant, but she could. And
have her give me a call.
Very similar.
I've said to somebody the other day, if you have a problem that money can fix and you have money, you don't have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's a mindset that a lot of people have to struggle with to get to. Whitney, I want to go back to something you said earlier, because it made me, it kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit, because you were talking about, when you're talking about creating fame, and maybe this is because we're dealing with fame and not dealing with other issues, that you said, I teach you how to change yourself. And so many of the the coaches that I talk to are talking about finding your authentic self and finding your true self and letting that come through. And you've got a different approach about that. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So I guess just full disclosure, I was raised with some religious abuse where there were people that told me this is the way to think, this is the way to do things. And so that's been something that like I've definitely worked through, but also now influences the way that I want to help people. Like obviously, and this is something that like the morality of all of it has just been on my mind, has been really weighing, where it's like I do want to be a thought leader, and I think that that's a tricky place when you start getting in people's minds, right? And influencing their opinions. And so I think when I was able to scale my business and move from, I still do have a few one-on-one clients, but from the most part, I'm working in a group setting now and teaching people instead of teaching, these are the steps to do, right? It's here is the process to continue creating results. I like to think about being an entrepreneur, being a creator, being an artist. It's like a video game, right? Like where it's that you want to hit that, let's use money, 100K a year, then it's 500K a year, then it's $1 million a year, right? Like that's going to keep growing if you're a person who continues to grow. It's the same with fame, right? You might want to hit 10,000 followers, then 20,000, then 1 million, well, that would be a big jump. But all of this to say, it would not serve my clients for me to only focus on let's get you to the next step and like find your authenticity in there. So instead I want to teach you the tools so that you can continue playing this video game and get higher and higher and higher. And I think because I've worked with clients all the way, people who are still in college all the way to, again, those like award-winning A-list celebrities, it is all the same process. And so for me, it's important, and, given my own history, just to empower people with tools to be able to help themselves. And ultimately, I think, as, again, entrepreneurs, as artists, we are all mavericks. We all are, we're not just interested in, let me just go get hired at this corporation or, whatever. It's like, no, I want to make an impact. I want to do something different. To do something different, you got to do something different, right? And so it would be a disservice for me to just say, follow my steps. Here's what I do, and this is what helps me. So it really is for me about giving clients the tools to empower themselves to do these things for themselves.
Maybe this will help me understand then. What are some of those tools that you're talking about that help somebody advance forward like that?
Yeah. So what I do is I'm teaching clients exactly how to overcome these thoughts, overcome this mindset, right? And at every freaking level, it's going to come back up. So first you're going to think...
And you're talking about the mindset that would hold you to a point of comfort and not want to experience the change? Is that
exactly? Exactly.
Okay.
So
right.
At the highest level, what I'm doing is, you're going to get to a place where, saying, like you were saying, someone told you a number and it just scared the hell out of you, right? But then, I don't know if you hit that number or not, but at some point that's going to be the new normal. And if you want to grow, you got to go to the next level, and you got to go to the next level, right? That's that video game, the analogy, what I'm saying. And so what I'm teaching clients to do is to continue being able to overcome that process or overcome those thoughts and continue going to that higher and higher level. The first thing that we're doing is overcoming, as we've talked about, that foundational level of setting yourselves up for failure by picking the wrong goal, right? So I actually do teach people, this is how to know how to pick a goal. This is how to pick a goal for your brain, for your creativity, for your sensibilities, so that you're not just because otherwise from the get-go, you're just screwed if you pick the wrong goal, right?
So how would I pick the right goal then?
So, for the scope of this, I'm not trying to give you a non-answer, but we would have to look into what is your brain, what are your specific tendencies, how do you?
It's a more complicated answer.
The first part is a little more complicated. It's a little more nuanced. I have what I call it's a choose your own adventure. So a little bit of a questionnaire of how do you normally kind of set goals, and how do we do something different instead, and give you the tools so that you kind of always know. The way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So with this, that's the foundation, and then I have this 6-step process. What happens a lot of time is every client has 1 or 2 steps that they get stuck on, but that's always the same steps that they get stuck on. So once they learn how to go through this process, they'll continue going through that. And then, once you get stuck again, or you're getting frustrated in your goals, or you're tapped out on growth, or you're not seeing the numbers increase or whatever, you're going to know, oh, I bet I'm stuck at step 2 again, right? So that's kind of the high level. But basically, so the first thing is we set the foundation. The second thing is we start to figure out what is that comfort zone for you, and how is it keeping you safe. This is where what I call we hack your brain, right? We outsmart your brain's primitive instincts and give you the awareness of what's going on. Now, after that, we move into the phase where I call we hack your nervous system. So I'm not a fan of just fake it till you make it, because it doesn't work for artists. If you are scared and you have to do a scene where you're happy, it doesn't quite connect. You also don't have access to your highest levels of creativity when you're in a fear response. So if you think about, like, you know, if you were being attacked by a bear and then someone was like, can you play a sonata? Like your brain's going to be like, wait, what? I'm like, I have all this adrenaline, I have all this cortisol, I have all of these things. So instead, what we do is, instead of, again, I call it, you know, just gaslighting yourself and being like, I'm fine, I'm happy, we actually rebalance your nervous system and help you feel safe, and essentially like normalize these new levels, normalize these new goals for you. So you get to the place that you feel safe creating those, and then and from that place, from that foundation, then we start taking action towards the goals. Because once your goals feel normal, and once you're not subconsciously blocked, the how unfolds itself. Most results are not actually that complicated.
Oh, I agree with that so much. I think there are so many people out there that are buying into the thought process that you only make changes when you're hurting enough, or when you're in enough pain. And I think that for some people that's how it works, but I think it is so much more healthy to do what you're talking about, which is to look at this place of comfort that you're in, analyze what is the next appropriate goal, and be looking at, how do I move out of this place of comfort into a place of growth, without allowing myself to get to that point of, you know, difficult emotions or distress.
Well, and Sean, I think something that you're saying just speaks to like what Sanger was saying earlier, which is that you have to feel worthy of doing that, though, right? Whereas most people do wait until a rock bottom moment, and then they look around and they're like, something's got to give, right? But then it's kind of like if you have a personal trainer and you're only going to them when you have an injury, they can kind of help you out and help you, know how to take the steps to not injure yourself again. But if you go when you're in a place that you're like, I'm not bleeding here, right? Like, I don't have any injuries, then you can just optimize. But that does take a level of self-trust and a level of thinking, I'm worthy of change. I'm capable of change. It's possible for me to have even an even bigger life. And ultimately, that's where you can make the most progress.
But that's one thing I've learned from you, Sean, that's helped me the most in my career, is that the best time for change is when you feel like everything's going great.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the time to really take it to the next level, because it ain't going to be great forever. I cannot coast right here for the rest of my life and then retire off a nice pension. That's not happening. So when it starts to feel really good, those are the worst times in my life, because I go, damn it, man, I gotta go again.
Yeah, I had a business coach years ago, and I was in that place of comfort in the business, and for a fleeting moment I thought, I'll just throttle back on marketing. I'll save some money and not spend this money on this outbound marketing and passive marketing that I was doing. It was a fleeting moment. And I mentioned that to my business coach, and he said, okay, so you just want to kind of hold steady. I said, yeah, that'd be nice. Just kind of take a break, just hold steady. And he goes, okay, so we're going to need to bring in about 25 million this year in new assets. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, that's how much you'll lose in just outflows of people retiring and dying and moving on and meeting their goals and taking just normal distributions. You've got to replace at least that much. So you're gonna fall back if you stop.
Yeah. If you stop, you're going backwards.
Yeah, which is a whole other larger issue with maternity leave and all of those things.
It was a whole other issue.
But yeah, absolutely it is. And I do think that as humans, it's like we are wired to stay still, but we evolve, we grow, we want to grow. There's that part of us. And even if your business needs that 25 million in the bank in order to stay sustainable, I've seen in my own life, my personal life, my family's life, that when we don't have a task, our brains will find a problem. Our brains want to solve problems. And so you can either give it a goal and give it a problem to solve, give it like a puzzle, a little chew toy, or it's going to find something for you, right?
Yeah, I think we are wired
chaos.
to stay safe and comfortable, like you said. I think we're also wired to explore and grow and connect with purpose. at the same time. You've just got to find the right one.
People, we see that all the time when people retire and they think that what they need to do in order to find fulfillment and happiness is to run away from all of the responsibility that they have in their life. And that those people,
so bad.
they stop shaving, they stop showering.
Oh man, I have seen that so many times.
They get out of shape. It's horrible.
Oh, I had a guy retire and came. Horrible. I didn't see him for 6 months. He came into the office. He had retired. Hadn't seen him in 6 months. He came in looking like he had just fallen off the train. I mean, not exactly like you said. Wearing a t-shirt untucked and flip flops and no.
I think the work that you're doing, Whitney, is only going to be more important as personal brands seem to be on an upward trajectory as far as like the ability to obtain influence in our society. And we're in a moment of decentralization across industries. We're in a moment of decentralization of power, decentralization of influence, decentralization in media, decentralization in finance. And so the ability for an individual to get their voice heard, promote their message, promote their cause, promote their business, it is going to rely heavily on personal branding, I think. And if people are stuck with mental roadblocks that are preventing them from getting there, like the work that you're doing is going to have a tremendous impact.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, I like to think about this of like, okay, so I used to live in Manhattan. I lived around the corner from this art gallery. It was a framing shop. It was called Jack's Art Gallery. And I went there once when I needed something framed. But then I would go back because he told me about Jack Jr. He told me about his dad. He told me about the business. I knew about how business was going in the pandemic. I knew about his kids' private school. Like I knew all of the things about their life. And what I think that like we often see as, personal branding is taking back, what I think of it is it's more like we're just getting that like small town feel back, right? Like I loved going to Jack Jr.'s gallery because I knew him, because I had a relationship with him. And with the internet and with things, people are lonely, right? And people want to feel like they have. Think about it. Yeah, it's like we want to root for people. We want to feel connected to people. And it's such an amazing opportunity for business owners because now all of a sudden the entire world can be your neighborhood, right? Everyone can become, like when someone knows that they need a life coach or mindset coach to help become famous, people are going to come to me because they feel like I'm the girl in the neighborhood that does that. And that's what the internet has created for us. But you have to overcome that block because so that's where the world is going. And yet we have this block of our brains aren't really wired to be able to perceive millions of people knowing who we are.
How do you think that we can take it to the next level of that like internet small town that you're talking about creating? Because that's an analogy that resonates a lot with me is I think we do miss the time when you could go down the street and you knew the banker and you knew the grocer, and you knew the insurance guy, and you knew the first, last name, and the children's names of the people in the town who did the things that you needed. And we don't have that anymore. We live in Fort Worth. It's not LA. It's not Manhattan. I go out for lunch every day, and maybe once a week I see someone I know. Totally. It is not a small town. And that's someone who's lived here forever, and it's like weird. It's like, oh, I'm seeing a lot of people if I see someone once a month. But how do we create that online without it being like fragmented? Like how do we make more communities than just who our own followers are, I guess?
Yeah. So also we should talk about Fort Worth at some point because I'm from Dallas. I didn't realize that's where y'all are based. But
oh really? We're fighting now.
Oh no, the podcast is canceled. I love that. No, so I mean, this is also, the work that I do with clients is essentially we're creating what's called a parasocial relationship. So that's the relationship that, like, let's say Lady Gaga has with her fans, where her fans actually feel like they are her friend. I'm sure y'all have this on the podcast too, where there are people that feel like they are in this room, they are friends with Sanger and Sean, and you don't even know they exist. Or maybe they've sent you a DM and said, or they've sent you a review or whatever. But ultimately, it is a relationship, but it's parasocial in that it's one-sided, but it feels like both. And so it can be like, for me as a business owner and for me as the entrepreneur, I have to make sure that I'm cultivating and getting the real relationships from the people in my life. And for me, that is, I do have online communities of coaches that I work with, like that where I'm the student, right? And I have the support. I do also make friends with my grocer. Like that is actually something that I just love to do. Like I know I'm the person who always has a guy. That's like what all my friends always know me as. But I think that as a business owner, in order to tap into that and to tap into the resource of the internet, you have to know how to create those parasocial relationships. And that is something that I think people misunderstand and think that that just happens, or think that certain people are special or that they hired or the right marketing team or whatever, when really it just does come down to knowing how to feel safe being seen in those ways, so that you can share the correct parts of yourself that will connect people to you, so that they do feel like you are in their neighborhood. Does that answer your question?
It does. I mean, maybe the level beyond that is, Zuckerberg's metaverse little small town that I'll create for myself one day. We'll create Sangerville, and we'll record this, the follow-up episode there in our new studio, which will be much nicer. Yes.
Right.
But yeah, that makes sense. Like that's maybe a simpler answer than what I expected. But I think a lot of what you're saying isn't overly complex, but it is very hard, right? It's hard to do these things. It's hard to have a mindset change.
Yeah.
It's not complex. And that people, I think, would prefer the opposite. They would prefer that it be so complex that you have to take this like magic potion.
Right.
But there is no magic potion.
No.
Because it's actually not that complex.
Well, it's simple. It's not easy though. Right.
Exactly.
Like just because you understand something doesn't know how you know how to do it. I think, your mindset, it's like trying to read a jar when you're inside the jar. Right. We can't see those things for ourselves. We can't see those blocks. And I think, even just going back to the metaverse example, I think that was such a great example where, Zuckerberg is like, oh, like everyone's like, we're lonely, we're at home, then let's bring that online. But it removed the parts of us that we actually want. And I think that human connection, I think that's always going to be here. And I know we get afraid of robots and AI and, all of that.
Yeah,
but ultimately, those are all just tools. There was a time people were afraid of the television, right? And so I think just to know that these are tools that are going to enhance these personal relationships. And so knowing how to use that and to leverage that is ultimately
people used to be mad about the milkman losing his job. Like, we'll figure it out,
Exactly.
We'll figure it out.
He'll be fine. Yeah.
I know a lot of wealth advisors that are scared of AI, scared of robo-advisors. And I always make fun of those guys. Like some of them are my friends. I go, you must suck.
If they
you must
are,
be bad at your job.
They should be. If they are, they should be.
Because that means that they are the type of person to be replaced. But it's only because they're not cultivating real relationships and doing things that can't be outsourced.
Right.
But even if somebody even if AI completely replaced everything that I'm doing right now, I know that the answer is embedded in what you're telling us, Whitney, which is, hey, I can change my mindset and adapt and pivot, and I can figure it out. I know I can figure it out. Just because this is what got me this far doesn't mean that it's going to be what I'm doing in my 40s or my 50s or my 60s.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. It's like someone's going to figure it out. It might as well be you.
Well, and this may be a tactical question, but when we're looking at, if you're looking at business owners embracing social media and looking at advancing their own brand, right? There's a lot of different ways to go with that on social media to say, well, I'm going to be super authentic and let people into my life and family, or I'm going to add value, or I'm going to do funny videos, or there are so many different ways to do that. And my guess is that there's a lot of them where you could fall flat. And you would know right out of the gate if I'm heading down the wrong path and should stop me, right? And like, no, Sean, don't. This is not for you.
Yeah, you're not that funny.
Yeah, you're not that funny. Don't do it that way. How do you decide if you're a business owner or actor or somebody engaging in social media to build a following, build a brand? How do you know if you're heading down the right path in terms of how to advance that?
So I will say, like, for the most part, most business owners are doing it wrong, and not wrong in terms of it's not converting, but could be doing better, right? There is a large blind spot. I think, so if you think back to like 80s infomercials, we could watch those now and just like laugh at them and be like, that is so silly, like that anyone bought that. But at the time, that's what the audiences were evolved to consume. And so they did. audiences are evolving now too, though. And so what's actually what we need to be doing is looking at the cutting edge of who are Gen Z. What are they doing? And what they're doing is showing up authentically and putting their work out there. I think when a lot of people show up and they're like, I'm going to show value, I'm going to make good, funny videos. I do think on the one hand, for the most part, I do think the audiences have evolved past that, and it does seem a little bit cringy. However, even more importantly, if that platform goes away, you go away. And when you show up authentically and you create this parasocial relationship, then if the platform goes away, people care about you and they're going to follow you to your next platform. What I see a lot is that people currently right now with Instagram Reels and with TikTok, one of the biggest hangups is that people are approaching it the way that people in the past had approached YouTube. So let's say Mr. Beast, he found out what really worked on YouTube and he created his own genre, basically, of videos. And now he pulls that over to Instagram. He pulls that over to TikTok, and he's not engaging with the rules of either of those platforms. And yet, because he has this strong parasocial relationship, people will just eat that up. They love his videos and it doesn't matter. But then we have everyone else who's just trying to do what he's doing on YouTube or on YouTube and bringing that over to TikTok. So you get a lot of this so what I would argue is that when people are, trying to add value or trying to be funny or whatever, usually that's to Gen Z, that's the equivalent of showing up like an 80s infomercial. It's pretty transparent, I would say.
You're just trying too hard.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is it does take work. You're going to have to try hard. It's just it just doesn't quite land to the younger audiences. And ultimately, if you do want the longevity of a career, you do need to be able to speak to young audiences, because if you're speaking to people in their 70s, you got 30 years before you need a whole new fan base, right?
Yeah.
So
I gotta pick on Sean. I remember one time we were looking at he pulled up this either Instagram or TikTok profile, and it was another wealth advisor, and she was doing TikTok, normal TikTok stuff, like TikTok dances, she was adding sound into she was lip syncing things. And he was like, can you believe this? Who would ever hire someone like this? I would never hire someone like this. I go, yeah, you probably wouldn't.
He said, yeah, you're not her audience.
For sure.
But it's obviously working.
It works. And I mean, it is, this is all case by case. I don't advocate for my clients to make TikTok dances. It does.
That's not for everyone.
That's not for everyone. We do have to see, who is your target audience, all of that. But I will say that, remember that when I was in high school, Facebook was the young, all the young kids were doing it. And then all of our moms got on it and kind of ruined it. And so that, and now it's just part of the zeitgeist, right? It's just as, and so I think even with social media, it's easy to and it does, it feels cringy. It feels like I don't know, when I started, I was like, am I whoring myself out, making content? It feels bad and it feels cringy because we have this primal instinct to just keep doing things the same way and to not put ourselves out there. But I do think that a lot of people are underestimating the power of it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, this was very valuable for me. I think I learned so much. Thank you for being here, Whitney. Where can people connect with the work that you're doing?
So the best place to find me is on social media at Whitney Uland, TikTok and Instagram. And then also my website is abundantartistcoaching.com. At some point I need to rebrand it. It's a good problem to have when business has been too busy to be able to focus on that. But right now, abundantartistcoaching.com or at Whitney Uland.
Sweet. What's the next big project you're working on before we go?
In film and television?
Yeah.
I have several pilots. So the goal for this year is to sell a TV show. So I've got a bunch of them. So we'll see which of them comes to life. But that's the goal.
Well, when it does, come back and we'll talk about that.
Let me know so I can watch it.
For sure.
Thank you, Whitney.
Thank you, Whitney.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It was fun to talk to Whitney. My takeaway from talking with her is about looking at how we are wired and set to stay at a point of comfort, and that it becomes hard to make a decision. We've got these external forces, these primal instincts, social norms, and fear trauma coming at us that are holding us in a place of stasis that will cause us to not make decisions, And so I think when it comes to decision making, just recognizing those things can help you change your mindset and move forward.
My biggest takeaway is that fame is not necessarily a evil pursuit. To pursue fame can be as indifferent as the pursuit of money, right? The love of money is the root of all evil.
Just like
money,
the love of fame would be.
Yeah, but money itself isn't, and fame itself isn't. Both can be used to further your aim. And if you have more fame and you're pursuing a benevolent end, it's probably actually good.
You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support. It helps others find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more daily decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Decidedly Podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'm Sanger Smith, and this is Decidedly.
Insights, advice, and comments provided by Sean Smith, Sanger Smith, and speakers identified as part of the Decidedly podcast should not be considered recommendations. Speakers not identified as members of Decidedly are expressing their opinion, and their statements should not be construed as reflecting the views of the Decidedly team. This podcast is produced solely for informational purposes, not personalized advice.